Miss Yarroda Versi.
Ave Satanas! Hail Satan! Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Greetings, heathens. Welcome to Hail Satan. This is the podcast exploring Satanism, culture, and life in general through the eyes of modern Satanists. My name is Joseph Rose. I'm a member of an amazing independent congregation called Satanic Delco, and we welcome members from anywhere in the world. If you want to learn a little bit more about us, visit satanicdelco.com. Today, I'm going to present part of a roundtable discussion on the topic of artificial intelligence. But first, let's welcome some lovely Satanists that have chosen to join us recently on Patreon. We have Arceus Ruin, Mark, Hector, Ryan, William, Shannon, Marco, Christopher, Delia, Sucrose Mother, Knox, Val, Sam, Jamie, Rico, Rin, Chris, and Ray. Thank you all very much. You know I appreciate your support. You make this whole thing possible, so thank you very much. If you all have a moment out there, please visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. You'll find links to join me on social media, a forum to send an email, which I encourage you to do, and a link to join up with us all on Patreon. We have a few different tiers to choose from there with various benefits, including the amazing Greetings from Hell, Satanic Postcard of the Month Club. That is the most direct way you can support me and this show. If you'd like to do that, visit hailsatanpodcast.com. All right. Some members of Satanic Delco recently got together on Zoom to discuss the topic of artificial intelligence. Of the group that was on Zoom that night, only a smaller portion of them chose to join in the conversation this time, but that didn't stop us from going on for a couple of hours and continuing after the recording was stopped. So what you're going to hear is an edited portion of that conversation, and if you'd like the opportunity to take part in these discussions with a great community of Satanists, they are open to all members of Satanic Delco. So let's get it started. I have a list of questions. Most of them were generated by artificial intelligence. I used ChatGPT and Google's Bard to generate most of these questions, because why not? We're talking about AI, might as well put the technology to use a little bit. So the first question I have for everybody tonight is simply, when you hear the phrase artificial intelligence, what is the very first thing that comes to mind? Kirsten, go ahead.
To me, the obvious implication of artificial intelligence is these like fake human beings where you can't tell what's real and what's fake. I know that that's not really all that artificial intelligence is, but I think that's what people are thinking of when we use that term nowadays, versus like we've had artificial intelligence for years and years and years now, and it is already helping us in many, many different ways on pretty much every piece of technology that we're using has some kind of built-in artificial intelligence. It's just that now we've gotten to this level where, oh, maybe the big scary is right around the corner. So when I think of the words artificial intelligence, I'm thinking of like, are we going to be able to defeat the machines when they come to get us, basically?
Yeah, my first thought has always been Terminator. Of course, Terminator 2, Skynet. For so many people, maybe around my age or younger, that informed, I use that term lightly, that informed our view of what this means and what it could potentially turn into one day. The computers or machines will become self-aware, and not only will they be self-aware, but they will be evil and want to destroy us, to take over, preserve themselves, or something like that.
Was that a real turning moment where people were like afraid all of a sudden?
Well, I don't know that there was any realistic widespread fear, because there wasn't anything pointing to this technology being reality, at least any time in the very near future back then. And that was in the early 90s. That was like 91, I want to say. So there wasn't any immediate panic like, oh my gosh, this is happening. But it was a great story, and you could almost believe that with the tremendous rate of improvement of technology, that if we get into this artificial intelligence in the way that it existed there, I don't know. If a computer or a system of some kind is able to learn on its own, then who knows what's to stop it? And of course, there maybe are answers to these questions, but it was fiction, and so far it is still fiction, as far as we know. That's what informed me, and I think a lot of people, because all the stories we hear when people say, oh, it's going to be self-aware and this and that, and they're scared of it. Why are we scared of it? Why is it immediately a negative thought? And to me, a lot of it came from Terminator 2. Greg, go ahead.
So I was thinking about iRobot. Vivian, I think, was the name of the AI robot that controlled their whole system. So when I think of AI, that's kind of the first thought that I have is, we're going to see someone that creates this whole computer that basically runs a company that controls pretty much everything. In terms of how it actually is right now, we're kind of still in the early phases where it's a large language model where it's kind of learning from everything that it's taught. It's not really accessing the internet quite yet. It's kind of given a curated database to work with, but that's probably a discussion we'll get into later on where they're at. But
Sure.
Vivian is my start.
Right. Yeah, I didn't think of that when I forgot about iRobot. Thank you, Greg. Go ahead, Alexander.
It's a little hard to form a idea around AI because some people are totally for it and some people are totally scared of it. Those who are scared of it, they are just spreading more and more fear around. And I think that's the worst part of AI and the fear around it, I guess.
Yeah, people just sort of being afraid without really understanding it, maybe.
Yeah.
I think we can look back and see that there's a lot of that happens whenever there's new emerging technologies, or I remember Y2K. That was a big deal. The year 2000 was coming, and so many of us were convinced because of random stories on the news or whatever, that when the year changed to 2000, the computers weren't programmed to be prepared for that change of the numbers or whatever. And because of that, systems would collapse, and along with it, society would collapse, and we're all doomed because of Y2K. And of course, nothing happened that I'm aware of. I saw no difference. My Mac kept running just fine, and the bank was still open, and the supermarket worked, and my car worked, and everything was fine. So, yeah, there's always a lot of fear. Thank you, Alexander. Carter, go ahead.
It's hard to sparse them out. I feel like I have multiple thoughts simultaneously as the first thought. And it includes, the way artificial intelligence has been represented in the arts, like movies, in ways that cause warning or show bad things that can happen. Mm-hmm. I think about the technology improvements I've been experiencing in my lifetime and that can come up. I think about bias and the bias that we are already aware of in facial recognition software, for example, but also in medical things. And I can jump into that later. So we're recognizing flaws that we are putting in. Artificial intelligence is something that we are still providing input for. So we're creating it. And if I try to think about a doomsday type thing and what represents it movie-wise, I think of Ex Machina, which, if people haven't seen it, it's great, which goes into like the theory of mind part of it, where an intelligence could manipulate our feelings.
Right on, yeah. Anybody else, any quick first thoughts when you think of artificial intelligence? Ark, you're up.
Personally, I think of like all the different algorithms that work together and how sometimes you can't tell if it's a person or if it's an AI, and how that can affect the future, and different ways AI can be used in somewhat malicious ways.
Sure. For
like advertising and such. And I don't know, I had a discussion with some people before this and got some pretty good ideas. So yeah.
We can transition a little bit. My next question is, what are some examples of artificial intelligence currently being used in our daily lives?
Well, I know there's ChatGPT, and I learned that those can create code, and it can control advertising and how to get people to come back to pages over and over again and like loop people in And so they keep seeing different ads, keep going back because of the feedback that goes through, and it gets more personalized by learning about stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's maybe connected to what you've just mentioned, but our online platforms that we use, like Facebook, is a huge one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's safe to say, right? Is artificial intelligence at play there? Does that count?
I believe so.
Yeah, I tend to think so, but I don't know exactly where the line is drawn between something that counts as artificial intelligence versus just some sort of programmed algorithm that functions and runs according to its programming. It's hard for me to understand exactly where that line is drawn, but we know that a platform like Facebook, and it applies to Twitter and Instagram and all the others, they are designed to sort of learn from your behaviors. You're seeing targeted ads, and some of that is just as simple as your information that you've entered into your profile. You know, I'm a man that is of this age and I live in this part of the world and I like XYZ. That's a lot of information, but it also probably knows what things you click on and what things you linger on longer and which things you interact with more. And it learns and shows you those things more often, like you said, to keep you on the platform longer. And I guess the end goal, why would they want to keep you on the platform longer? Because there's ads on those platforms and they want you to see them and they want you to click them because they want advertisers to give them more money. So that might be one. Carter, go ahead.
An example I find very interesting is the AI used with self-driving cars.
Hell yeah.
And what I heard about the person who was hit by one. As I heard it, the self-driving cars had been very well trained, if you will, with the input to recognize all the different things, the signs, people, lights. But the pedestrians that the cars encountered in their training or from their input, they were all in crosswalks. And the person who was hit was not in a crosswalk. And so that car was apparently, as I heard it, not trained to recognize a pedestrian outside of a crosswalk. And a similar piece is AI was learning how to identify cancerous and malignant moles or skin lesions. And it was all the input was, giving it malignant, benign, et cetera. And it did a really good job for a while, but then they realized that it was identifying cancer, malignant cancer, in images that had rulers in them or size markations, because in the training, the ones that were malignant and problematic all had a ruler next to them or all had something measuring the length next to them.
Yeah, they put that in the image so that people looking at it have a sense of scale.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. It's a very common thing to be in medical images so that you know what you're looking at, the size that you're looking at. And it was just incidental in the images that the AI was received. And then the AI in analysis identified rulers as malignant.
Wow. Yeah. So it just sort of associated. So often the thing that had cancer also had a ruler in it. So when it saw a ruler, it thought cancer.
Yes.
Weird. Yeah, that's a weird one. But I imagine, and again, I don't know shit. I don't have a degree in anything related to artificial intelligence. I don't know shit. But I would imagine that once something that sort of obvious, it seems obvious, once that is discovered, they can easily program that away, I would think.
Yes, but so think about different advances that we've made over time. Look at vaccinations, which are incredibly relevant to recent years.
Sure.
Polio, which is well under control. The first vaccination that came out actually gave a lot of kids polio. And so they had to, obviously that was a problem. They tweaked things and they fixed it. And then the vaccine was great. Yeah. And with the cars, obviously, once they realized, oh shit, it needs to be able to recognize pedestrians, whether or not they're in a crosswalk. Yeah, of course they can work on that and fix that. But the process of learning what our biases are, what its biases are, where we fell short, all of that, there are consequences to our mistakes along the way or our shortfallings along the way, like people getting hit.
Sure. Yeah, and my answer for this one is that it is the cars, the Tesla self-driving and all of that stuff. I'm a huge fan of that technology, of course. So I have listened to some of the Tesla folks explain a bit about how that all works, and I find it incredible. I think that might be our biggest real world tangible example of AI at work, because now there's this fleet of these cars out there. There's hundreds of thousands of these cars driving around all day, every day. And every one of those Teslas has 8 cameras on every side of the car, looking at every direction at all times at the same time. And essentially in real time, as you're driving around town, all of those cameras feeds are being sent back to the supercomputer data center at Tesla, and that computer is processing all of that information and learning about what do people do when they're driving their car in this situation. What do they do at a stop sign? What do they do at this type of intersection or this ramp or this whatever? And they're watching, taking some sort of an average of what do human drivers do, and when does it lead to something bad and when does it lead to something good, and compiling all of that information to train its full self-driving computer. I think right now they say those cars, which they're still not fully baked, that system has a lot to learn, I'm sure. But right now it's safer than a human driver. And that's in its earliest stages. Even your best human driver can't see in 8 directions at once. You just can't. And so it has some functional advantages. I'm just really fascinated by it. I can't wait to see where it goes. Next up, I have, what are some common misconceptions or myths about artificial intelligence? I don't know about you guys, but the most common thing I always hear is it's evil, it will become self-aware, and it's probably going to be bad. Is that the most common myth, Alexander?
Yeah, I think it's a myth, because everyone in here have either heard them being evil at some point, or have heard that the satanic people are evil, and you know that you're not evil, and you know that the people you talk to is not evil. So you cannot just say something you don't know exactly is evil just because you think it's evil.
Right.
Unless you get to know the technology behind it and stuff like that.
Yeah, people seem to sort of jump to the conclusion that it is evil, even though we haven't necessarily seen it be evil. But yeah, go ahead, Kirsten.
I don't think that it's necessarily a myth, but I don't think that it's, by default where we're going to go. I do think that it is something that we need to be conscious of. Not the machines are going to take over the world and we're going to become, slaves to robots or anything like that. I mean, that's a little bit extreme in my opinion, but I don't know, maybe we're all going to look back at this podcast and think about how dumb Kirsten was in a few years. But you were talking about earlier about where do we draw that line. I don't know if there is a defined line, but I know that we use the term AI to talk about things that we use in real life all the time. Like you go onto a website and their customer service is, a robot. Like those are usually
right. A chat.
That's what we've been referring to as artificial intelligence in real world applications for the past 5 or 6 years, or 10 years or whatever. And it's just that now we're like, would you even call that AI? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, right? But that could be. That feels like a pretty good real world example that's been around for a little while. Customer service chatbots. That's definitely been a thing.
Also, did you just program these keywords so that it knows which way to point you in the right direction or what? But
right. And it probably knows what type of questions are going to most likely be asked. Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily a myth that the machines are going to take over or whatever bad things. I think that there are going to be consequences that Carter touched on that come from not only from our learning process and the development of our AI tools, but also just forever along the way. I don't think that we're ever going to become a perfect society with perfect artificial intelligence and all that stuff. But I do think that the myth is that it's only going to be evil, because I do think that in general, technology is improving society. Humans are smarter today than they ever have been. And that's not because our brain power got smarter. We as a society, as a society of humans are the smartest we've ever been. And I know everyone's like, oh, the kids today are so much dumber than mine because they can't remember phone numbers or whatever. And like, yeah, that's true, but we don't need to anymore because we can solve so many more complex problems than can I remember 10 digits for 100 people. So I guess the misconception here, I would say, is just about sort of along the same lines. I don't think it's a myth, but I think that it's a misconception that artificial intelligence is going to be the worst thing that's ever happened to humanity or something like that.
Sure. Greg, go ahead.
I agree with Kirsten here where it's kind of a misconception. We've been using AI for a very long time, and we've been using it as programming to search databases and do all these other tasks. The issue is that now with ChatGPT and all of these AI that they're calling them, they're changing the game. AI has been around, but now we're trying to see that we need to redefine what we're considering artificial intelligence. We can't just throw ChatGPT directly into that artificial intelligence bubble when we've been using it for a very long time. And it's funny, I'm actually looking at Google News, and within the top 20 articles, there are 5 or 6 that are like, we need more regulation on AI, or AI is bad, and this, that, and the other thing. So it's kind of one of those things where the media coverage of it is also pushing us to think that this is a bad thing. I don't think ChatGPT or Bard or any of them are inherently bad or anything like that. I think we just need to consider how we use them going forward.
Of course. And we also need to keep in mind that, of course, the developers, the programmers behind the scenes, they have input and they have ways of shaping and controlling it. But by and large, at least things like that, you mentioned ChatGPT and Bard, that's Google's version. Those are large language models. And so the information that it builds upon, that those things are fed to learn from, are us, people on the internet. So it's not just being born unto itself and learning from scratch and taking on its own biases. It's learning from us. And so one way or another, humanity, society is shaping what those things are and how they will behave to a certain degree, in addition to the input of the programmers, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, Greg. Alexander, go ahead.
It's just programming. Like, some people are evil, and some people can make that technology serve their agenda and make them evil. People can make killer robots that will take over the world if they are evil enough and has the technology.
Yeah.
So everything is possible, I guess.
Yeah. But one of the first things that people started doing when some of these started popping up was just trying to make it say inappropriate things. They were, can we make it say some racist shit? Can we make it say some evil shit? It's just, who knows? Maybe they're just having fun with the technology. They're trying to be silly. They're trying to make it say stupid things. But it's interesting. It is interesting to see what the technology does with those type of prompts. Carter, go ahead.
I think it's interesting and important to think about the different types of intelligence that fall into artificial intelligence, and also our lack of knowledge about the different types of intelligence that fall into it. And the tools that we have and the biases that we provide in those tools will lead to outcomes that we aren't expecting. I really enjoy the Rick and Morty episode where Rick's car it's the one where they go into the battery and they go into the battery with the miniverse, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Rick's spaceship is tasked to keep his granddaughter Summer safe. And in that episode, you see how that, it's a comedic animation, but it provides creative solutions to keeping the person inside the car safe that we would not have, or she or others would not have been like, yes, take this action, in order for this outcome. And when I'm working with people, when I have interns, stuff like that, one of the things I say all the time is usually it's not a yes or no question. Usually it's a how question. Like, well, how can we accomplish this? And you can have a plethora of different types of answers in front of you, that could be really catastrophic or not. And once you identify how, then you determine if it's worth it or not. And the determining if it's worth it or not is a very subjective nuanced process. So I just think that there are lots of intelligences that we are not yet taking into consideration, and that we're expecting artificial intelligence to be what we make it and what we expect. But I think that what we're not expecting and biases we're not even aware of will come out.
Yeah, and that really is one of the most, to me at least, that's one of the most fascinating aspects of the idea of a computer that can learn on its own. It sounds like the possibilities are limitless. Like, what's it going to learn? How is it going to interpret things? What's it going to do with that information? That's where we're free to let our minds run wild about it turning evil and taking over and Terminator and all this stuff. But I'm just pumped to see some of it happen. You know, I don't tend to be pessimistic about it, but we'll talk about that more later too. Thank you, Carter. How can artificial intelligence impact job markets and employment opportunities? I know this is another area where people have some fear, perhaps. I've heard comments like, it's going to take all our jobs. So the robots are going to take all our jobs. Ark, go ahead.
Another story I heard, I know. Apparently someone included a AI-generated photo in a photo contest and it won. And that really, in my opinion, like that speaks to what's the future of art with AI. Does it decrease the value in it? Spend all this time just for it to be made in seconds?
Right. Yeah, I think I may be vaguely familiar with the same or similar story. And yeah, there's a reality that there are certain tasks that people have figured out how to do over time, got good at it, found a way to monetize it. And as time goes by, technology makes that job really easy to do now, less specialized, or maybe it doesn't need you really at all or that much. And that's not new to what we're calling artificial intelligence nowadays. That has happened all throughout technology. As technology has grown over the decades, that always happens, and I think it will continue to happen. But yeah, that is a thing. What becomes of that photographer when you can generate that image from your computer without having to go to Alaska with your expensive camera and your lenses and you're freezing to death to capture that image? Who needs all that when you can generate it with Midjourney? So that is valid. Greg, go ahead.
I agree that there is going to be some sort of change with this AI, ChatGPT, Bard, all that coming out and making certain things easier versus what they were in the past. But it's happened before, right? Before macros existed in Excel, you had to do it all by hand. Now there's macros for it. So I think that when it comes to like school and actual jobs, I think that people are going to use it. And I've seen articles about, college kids using it to write papers. But at the same time, you also still just can't have ChatGPT write your paper and not proofread it. Because there have been stories of kids getting caught getting written up for copyright because they didn't actually read it and it referred to itself in the paper.
Yeah.
And it's actually one of the top stories here is ChatGPT, U.S. lawyer admits to using AI for case research. Like we gotta figure something out. Like how is this going to work?
Well, I think one of the great, at least current day, again, I still see these tools like Bard and ChatGPT. I assume they are really in their infancy. What they are today is nothing compared to what they will be in a year or 5 years. Like it's going to be vast improvements, I think, probably pretty quickly. But right now, one of the great uses of those tools is something like research. Now obviously you don't want to let the AI write your paper for you. That's, I think, if we want to draw a line where something is cheating, maybe that's cheating. That is definitely cheating. But research is a great use for it. And there's always that period of time where a tool comes along like this. Let's use ChatGPT as the example. This tool has come along that makes research a bit easier and faster and more efficient. That's great. And in the meantime, while that's just happening, it's very new and now people are using it, there are going to be people that push back against that and say, well, no, you're not exerting as much effort and therefore it doesn't count as much. It's not as good because you're not working as hard. And As far as technology goes, I'm a very forward-thinking person. I am sort of pro-technology, I guess, generally. And I'm a fan of working smarter, not harder. If I can accomplish or gather the same information in 4 seconds that used to take us 4 days climbing through old books in a library, then great. We have more time to put toward other things. So I'm not afraid of it in that sense. I think it's great. But of course, there are limits, right? When someone uses it to write their term paper, not great. That sort of defeats the purpose of having to study and write a term paper.
Yeah, completely agree.
Was that all for you, Greg?
Yeah, I'm good on that one.
All right, thank you. Jamie, go ahead.
One thing that I think of is that somebody's got to program all the things related to AI. And I think the more advanced AI gets, the more highly specialized positions are going to need to open up for people to continue programming it to get even smarter and also like try and keep it in check. The example that I think of is a character from the video game Horizon Forbidden West, Tilda Vandermeer, who before the apocalypse, she had created this very meticulous program to hunt down actual pieces of art versus what was meticulously reproduced through artificial intelligence.
Right. Yeah, that was sort of what I was thinking of about the term papers and things. People are using it to write papers, right? At the same time that all this is happening, people have developed AI tools to detect AI written papers. So right now there's a few websites out there, and I'm sure there's more coming by the day, that you submit a piece of writing and it gives you back a score saying this was, 20% written by AI or 100% written by AI. And of course, I have no idea how it does that. I don't know what type of markers it uses to discover all of that, but they're out there. And I assume just like the tools we're using to write papers with ChatGPT, the tools will improve to detect AI written tools. And it feels like it's a race between the two, right? Which is smarter? Can this tool make writing so good that it is undetectable as being AI, or is the AI detector ahead of the other one? And
well, I think the AI detectors have already been found to be detecting non-AI written content as being AI written content.
Yeah, there have been examples of that. And so it's fascinating. And I think it's those little races. That's technology, right? That's how we improve. I'm going to make this thing better. Oh, this thing fucked up. I'm going to make it better. And we race toward the perfect, flawless tools. And it's a forever race. Was that good for you, Jamie?
Yeah, that was great.
Right on. Thank you. Alexander, go ahead.
Something just popped in my head when you said people have made websites and stuff like that for detecting if something is written by ChatGPT and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I saw a video of a website that actually you can put the text through and it actually removes that thing. So it says that it's written by a human.
Yeah, you can tell it, here's this paper or whatever, paraphrase this as to be undetectable as AI. You can actually tell it, make this so it's not detectable as AI. And the AI will do that.
So in my mind, that actually goes into the war between, is it like who is smarter? Is the AI smarter than the detectable AI?
Yeah. Well, of course, even right now, there are multiple systems out there. There are probably 5 or 10 different websites that you could submit text to and have it detect. And will they all give the same result? I bet they won't. People are using different algorithms and they're put together in different ways, looking for different things. And yeah, it's this competition. I'm a big believer that competition in the marketplace is what brings forth improvements.
Yeah. And the original thing I was going to say was that the first thing I actually think of when I think of AI is actually Star Wars. The droid in Star Wars they need to be,
of course.
Yeah, they need to be reset or else they will get their own personality. And
That's right.
Yeah. And I am just waiting for the AI to be like that. If if it does not get reset, it would be like, hey, buddy, what's up?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've been looking at stories of AI for our whole lives, right? Star Wars came out in the 1970s. And of course, C-3PO is artificial intelligence. Really great, advanced AI with a focus on language. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think of old C-3PO all this time. Cool.
And there's Data from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well, and don't forget Bishop from Aliens.
That's right. That's right. Bishop, a really advanced, convincing AI. Leave it to science fiction to give us all these great stories. Carter, go ahead.
As we're talking about Bishop and C-3PO, stuff like that, it's very common for artists to draw from research or current research or current events and happenings. But a lot of science is inspired by arts. And I'm disappointed I don't have any good examples to give right now, but it really goes both ways. The arts and science are intertwined in exciting ways and inspire innovation on both fronts.
Definitely. How can we ensure that artificial intelligence systems are fair and unbiased?
We can't.
That may be the answer, right? I mean, that may be the answer. Ark, go ahead.
Just like Carter just said, we can't, because the AI is programs and you can't be sure who programs it and what biases they may put in it. So I don't believe that we can be sure that it is unbiased.
Yeah. Greg, go ahead.
So the thing that I'm thinking about is, all right, so we gave Ultron access to the internet for 5 minutes and look what happened. So yeah. I think we're going to end up in the kind of the same boat. I don't think there is really a good way to remove any of that bias. I think inherently, if you give it access to everything, it's just going to find those biases, and we're going to have to try and find a way to solve those. But I don't think you're going to stop it.
Right. I imagine it's not a like build it once and let it loose type of thing. This is a matter of constant updating and tweaking and adjusting the boundaries, maybe aiming it in a direction. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. What are some ethical considerations when it comes to artificial intelligence and privacy? Are there ways that it's being used right now where privacy is a concern? Greg, go ahead.
Well, I think we need to define like which AI are we talking about here, because are we talking about the camera systems that government systems use for facial recognition and everything like that? Or are we talking about the chat GPTs and the bards and those kinds of models?
You know, on some level, they're all involved. You know, we were talking earlier about the way like social media platforms collect information and use them in a way that counts as artificial intelligence. Right. And we made a basic mention of the facial recognition. So yeah, all these things are a factor, I guess.
Yeah. So I think that the whole thing is you have to define which system you're going to talk about. But I do agree that there are some potential privacy concerns. And I don't know how those can get solved besides just being more open about how they're being used.
Yeah. Transparency about how they're being used is always nice. And I think we would all sort of like to know that, because we are, on some level, we are the commodity. You know, it's our data that's being collected and most often sold. You know, Facebook and, you know, online platforms, I don't think any one is really better than another. They're collecting as much information about us as they can get. And most often, one way or another, we give them permission to do it. We talk like we don't like it. We say, "Oh, that's not cool. They're scanning me. They're tracking everything I do online, everywhere I go." But we hit that button when we sign up that says, you know, we don't know what it says because we don't fucking read what it says. We just hit the button. Yep, I agree to your terms of service. And those terms of service spend 47 pages telling you we're going to collect everything, bitch, and we're going to use it, and we might sell it to a third party. So do you agree? Yep. Here's my name. Here we go. Here's my email. So, yeah, there are considerations to be made. Jade, go ahead.
There's a copyright problem. Many AI images generate program has been gathering their images from a bunch of works drawn by their illustrators.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've talked a bunch about the large language models, but there are at the same time developing all of these cool image generators. There is Dolly, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion is another. There are a handful of them out there. Adobe is working it's in beta. They have a thing called Firefly that they're building into Photoshop, and they have sort of a standalone version of it right now. Again, I don't know exactly how these things are working in the background, but we understand that they're collecting information from the internet at large. They're going around scanning images of everything, everywhere. Pictures of people, dogs, cats, artwork, illustrations, cars, everything that we have photographs of or drawings of or paintings of. It's collecting all of this and just absorbing it into its computer brain. And so when we give it a prompt that says, hey, I want a photorealistic portrait of a woman with brown hair and a blue dress on petting a cat, it knows what that means because it has learned what a woman is, what a brown hair is, what a cat is, and what a blue dress is. And it gives you some versions of these images. And, we can nitpick it. Some of the image results that come from these things are silly and wonky, and the fingers are fucked up for some reason. But it's also pretty damn good. How long would it take you to create one of these images? It would take me forever because I can't draw, I can't paint a realistic picture, I can't do shit. But this computer program can do it in about 4 seconds. And even though I can nitpick it, it's pretty damn good for a thing that really just started existing pretty recently. So, yeah, it is out there scanning the internet, and part of what it's scanning, a large part of what it's scanning, are copyrighted images. Images that were created by someone who most likely didn't give any sort of explicit consent that their work could be scanned. So maybe that's a concern. I don't know. I wonder if you're an artist, if you're a painter or a photographer, would you want to, and will you ever be able to, exempt your work from being learned from by the AI bots? If your image or your writing or your whatever exists in some public way, especially if it's just posted right on the internet, then your information is probably getting scraped, and it's probably going to. And maybe that's, at least here in America, because of our First Amendment. There is no expectation of privacy in public. For example, if you're walking on the sidewalk or you're in the DMV, for example, and someone has a camera, then they can record you. That's just the way it is. If you're in public, you can be recorded. And it's not literally the same, but I think some of the same principles will apply. I think if you've taken an image and posted it on a publicly accessible website, then just like any person with a set of eyes can look at it, any one of these bots that are scraping the internet for information can look at it. And that's kind of, I think, going to be the way it is. But we'll see. What are some potential future developments or advancements we can expect to see in artificial intelligence? So where do we think these tools are going to be in the near future? What are we going to be able to do? Jamie, go ahead.
I think we're definitely heading towards creating it more like virtual reality. I came across a story yesterday about a person who is creating a Skyrim mod that uses artificial intelligence to let NPCs in the game have realistic conversations with the player. And if that continues to develop, then we might be seeing a lot of that in the gaming community, where games will be more, I guess, dynamic instead of like a particular script that the NPCs will go by. Artificial intelligence will actually allow more interaction, more realistic experiences, especially in like the virtual reality setting. So it's like almost like you really are in a different world.
Yeah.
So I think the video game industry, I think, will really see an uptick in that.
Yeah. And we've talked a bunch about the language models and the image stuff, and it seems a little behind those, but it's coming up quickly, is AI generating music. That's been happening already. It's everything from generate a beat in this style to generate a heavy metal album in this style. Like, give me a brand new AI generated thrash metal album. And like, that's going to be a thing. And it's happening. It's starting to happen, and it's going to get good. We're going to buy an album from some band that doesn't fucking exist. That's what I think is going to happen. Go ahead, Greg.
So I think we're going to see in the next couple of years that AI, the chat GPTs and stuff like that, are going to become more commonplace. You're going to be able to use them for different jobs. You're going to be able to use them to write programs for companies for security purposes. I think it's just going to be just commonplace. It's going to end up being like the macros for Excel. I think we're just going to end up there, at least on those. And then I think we'll see more towards the electric cars and the self-driving cars and more along those lines.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think it's going to be so baked in to everything, the way we take it for granted. We search Google, you use your web browser, you just type in what you want. And that's beginning, of course. Microsoft has built GPT-4, I think, into Bing. All of a sudden, Bing became relevant again recently out of nowhere because they made a deal with OpenAI, creator of ChatGPT, and they built in a custom version of that to their Bing internet search. And Google is rolling out their version of it. I haven't heard about it yet directly, but I'm certain that Apple will not be far behind. Safari and Siri and Alexa and all of these different things that we use in our daily life are going to incorporate more and more of this technology. And I guess those things already, to a degree, count as AI, right? Does Siri and Alexa and Google Assistant, do they all count as an AI?
Yes, I would consider them to be AI already.
Yeah. But they feel like a much more basic version, right? Like they're doing some cool things. They're doing voice recognition and parsing that out into data that they can return to you. But it's in its current state, Siri is a convenient interface for basic searches of information that we could do in other ways already. But I think with the technology that we're cracking open now, it's really going to be a next level of all of that stuff. As soon as Siri can have access to a large language model like GPT-4, that's incredible. That's a really big step up to me. But I think it'll still be rudimentary compared to what we're going to see in a year or two. Go ahead, Carter.
My Adam brought up the water argument. So if you're looking at ChatGPT, looking at the resources that go into artificial intelligence, and you could say with programs, situations, applications, companies that are pretty much doing the same thing separately or could all be combined to be more efficient. According to gizmodo.com, an average user's conversational exchange with ChatGPT amounts to dumping a large bottle of fresh water out on the ground, new research says, dated May 10th of this year. So it's important to think about not just the ramifications of our own biases and the inputs we provide and what we do with the outputs, but also we're still in a world that is having a lot of difficulty navigating the energy requirements that go into all of it.
Right. So what you're saying, just to summarize, I think, if I have this right, is the computing power that is required to do all of this is significant. And all of that uses energy and requires cooling and all of these things that do have some sort of environmental impact. Is that about right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I personally think that they should be happening, but we need to simultaneously be finding more efficient ways to navigate future technology. But yes, so it's just something to keep in mind as part of the ramifications.
Definitely. Renewable energy in general, I think, is important and good. And it's cool that we are making strides in that area, but it can always come a little quicker, I think. So are you mostly optimistic or pessimistic about AI and what it's going to bring to our society?
It doesn't affect me personally, but I'm on the more pessimistic side just because two reasons. For one, the AI voices, they can already imitate people, especially, famous people, if they're
That's
you know,
right.
their voices are out there, and there's already things been going around about, you know, oh, this person said this. You know, I have this audio clip of them saying it, and you know, there's already been some you know, red flags with that. And two, art has been stolen basically by the AI creations.
Mm-hmm.
They take pieces of people's art and just like form it together, and I feel like it's bad for especially digital artists, kind of just stealing their work completely. And also eventually people aren't really going to go, you know, to real artists anymore. They're just going to have AI make it for them instead of a real person, and I feel like that might affect some people's jobs, you know.
Yeah, we touched on some of that stuff, but not all of it. And yeah, you just reminded me again, like I love this technology. I'm fascinated and I like to check it out and use it and see what it's good for. And I've used a bunch of this stuff. And if any of you guys listen to the podcast, you have heard an AI clone of my voice without knowing it on the podcast. You have heard it. And let me tell you about a piece of my workflow. When I'm recording the podcast, I sit right here. You guys that are on Zoom now can see me. I'm in my garage. I'm in a chair. I have headphones and my recorder next to me and my computer. And this is where I record. I sit here. I talk into the mic. It records it onto a little SD card. When I'm all done, I bring that card into the house, into my little room downstairs. I put the card in my computer. I import it and I edit the audio. Sometimes, while I'm in the process of listening back and editing the podcast, I realize that I messed up a word, or I left something out, or I just fucked up a word. I said it and it sounded a little stupid. So what I need to do is come all the way back out. I go upstairs, walk out of my house into the garage, put the card back in, record one sentence to fix the stupid sentence that I messed up, and back into the house and paste it all in. That's been my workflow. But now, guys, we have artificial intelligence. And I can't actually remember the name of the tool, but I use it. I pay like $5 for it or something. And it creates a voice clone. So I've created a voice clone of myself. And I can type into a box anything I want, and it will generate my voice saying those words. And there are sliders to tweak it this way or that way to make it a little more whatever you want it to be. And so now when I'm editing the podcast and I say a word that sounds stupid, and I don't have to go through all of that shit anymore, I don't need to come back out here and record it. I just right there from my seat, I type in the sentence I want to fix, it generates it, and I paste it right in, and you'll never know the difference.
Just
now,
one question though with that.
Sure.
Does that not like bother you a little bit? Like hearing, not bother you, but like kind of weird you out, you know, hearing your own voice saying something that you didn't say?
Yeah, well, I'm of the mind that I'm so jazzed about the technology. That overtakes my negative views. Now, in that one use case in my workflow, that's great. That's a real great real world use that helps me out. And it didn't cost anybody else a job. It just saves me time and work. And so that's great. At the same time that I'm doing that, I've seen videos on the internet. In particular, there were a couple, they were maybe made last year or within the last couple of years. Someone made these selfie videos of Tom Cruise just talking about some stuff. And it wasn't Tom Cruise at all, but you would believe that it's Tom Cruise. It was a selfie video of Tom Cruise basically talking into his phone, saying, you know, whatever, just talking about some basic shit. And it just, nothing about it looked or sounded like it wasn't Tom Cruise. It was awesome. And it was also terrifying because if you can do that with Tom Cruise, that means you can do it with any other celebrity or civilian or politician or president of the United States or any other nation. You can have a video along with the voice of any person on earth that is indistinguishable from reality. And so what will the ramifications of that be? I don't fucking know, but it's going to be weird. That's for sure. Go ahead, Greg.
I think I'm more on the fence about everything. When it comes to Chat, GPT, and all those, I think we're going to see, and what they come up with in the next year or two is going to push my lean one way or the other on
Yeah.
whether I am for it or against it. But in terms of the deep fakes and things like you were talking about, I think that those we need to try and get a better handle on, because I think that they're going to start causing some problems for a lot of people.
Yes.
And that's the nefarious kind of technology that we need to like put a stop to, because if we don't, and someone sees this politician says this and they're like, I never said that, now we've got a big problem.
Right.
So
yeah, that's an area, we talked about there's websites where you can run your paper through it and it'll tell you if it's been generated by AI. That's the type of thing where we need tools like that can tell us this video is real or this audio is real. We need to be able to know if the message of the president that is on YouTube telling us something terrible has happened is real or not. Yeah,
it's very scary to know that that's actually a possibility.
Yeah, and not only that technology has existed for a little while, but it's not easy to come by. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to get this sort of specialized software and all of that. But with every passing day, it's all becoming more accessible. That's going to be an app that you can just download on your iPhone, and it's going to be able to do. You can do it now. In fact, I just played with an app within the last 2 weeks where you can take a still photo of you or anyone, and it will convert it into a video that is moving and singing a song, and it looks like that person singing that song. It's insane.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
And it's, right now it was sold as just, it's a little novelty. It's a short little video clip and it's funny, but the technology is there. And I tried it with a photo, just a random little photo on my phone. And I couldn't believe that it worked as well as it did. And it did it in like 1 minute.
Wow.
So It's getting crazy. It's getting crazy fast.
No kidding.
Overall, I don't know. I don't know if I've spent enough time thinking about all of the ramifications. I acknowledge all these scary bits, like deep fakes and what that could mean and voice cloning. But I get overtaken by my excitement over the technology because I'm such a fan of that. I love the advancements in technology. But without a doubt, it's going to be more important than ever to build tools and have people in place to sort of be able to tell us what is real and what's not. And we have to be able to trust them. And that's hard. We have to believe that whoever this is, whatever app, whatever company, whatever committee of people it is, we have to trust them and trust that they have our well-being in mind. And do they have something to gain by us not knowing what's real? I don't know. Anybody else optimistic or pessimistic about all of this technology in general?
Yeah, man, it's going to be great.
Is that what you think?
Yes, I think it's going to be great. I do. It's are there going to be a lot of casualties along the way? Oh my God, fuck yes.
Yes.
But ultimately, we as a species and we as creatures of the earth will encounter, discover, and experience all sorts of new intelligence and environments and ideas that we have not yet experienced. And things will go poorly. There'll be mistakes. There will be issues. Ultimately, it will be an amazing amount of information and experiences until the sun expands and it's all lost.
Yeah. Look, throughout time, we advance our technology from the wheel up through artificial intelligence and everywhere in between. And all along the way, shit gets a little fucked up sometimes. Some people have lost jobs. Some people have been harmed in the process of things. But I think most people generally have a sense that the positives of technological advancements outweigh the bumps in the road toward getting there. Overall, our society now is better than 2,000 years ago. We kind of like our modern conveniences in a way that we wouldn't want to trade them. And is it possible that artificial intelligence, some version of it, will be the last straw? Will that be the thing that went too far where now we don't like that trade-off? I don't know. I hope not. I'm really excited about the positive parts. But yeah, there's going to be some weird shit going on. Well, all right, guys, that's about as much of the structured conversation that I had ready for us. So if anyone else has any random thoughts or questions or opinions they want to share on the topic, now is the time. Kirsten.
I will bring it slightly back around to Satanism, and I don't know if I have an opinion built in here, but I know that one of the parts of the Church of Satan's pentagonal revisionism, which is their 5 things that are necessary to make society more Satan-friendly, is these 5 things that they should work on. And one of the 5 things is the construction of artificial human companions.
That's right.
Is the words that they use. And I was looking into this because there's conversations that people have on about what that means, and there are definitely benefits. Like we've talked about tons of the benefits of AI, and they in Church of Satan spaces that I can see online and in podcasts and in their writings talk about some of the beneficial things. But the thing it comes back to pretty consistently is companionship. And I'm looking right now at Anton's writing from the Devil's Notebook about it, and it's not specifically about sexual companionship, but if you go online, they're talking about sexual companionship. They're talking about having like sex robots, right, that look, feel, and think and do everything like a human. You wouldn't know any difference, that you wouldn't know that it wasn't a human if somebody didn't tell you it wasn't a human. And I just found it very interesting that is the thing that, even if people do occasionally converse about some of the other benefits of AI, the most common conversation online I see about it is how sex robots are good in Church of Satan spaces.
Yeah, well, they say artificial human companions. So imagine, sure, maybe for some people that's just, I want a sex robot, but just imagine it as a complete artificial human companion. So whatever you would do with a companion, this thing would fill that role. You hang out with it, talk with it, have sex with it, make it clean your room, whatever.
That's sort of like, that's what Anton's writing about, right? He's writing about companionship in all forms, whatever. And people do talk about that in spaces. They're talking about it a little bit, but like, if you just go look it up, if you go search Reddit for what they have to say about artificial human companions, like they're talking about sex robots. Yeah. And I just think that's very funny that's like where everyone's brain is going.
Well, you have to consider who the people are that fit into the category of first Church of Satan and second Reddit. So these are people that want, they need a sex partner badly.
It seems like, and part of it is like that maybe they acknowledge that there are benefits, but that's just not the interesting conversation for them, Yeah. I don't know. I just think that is funny. Although Anton in the Devil's Notebook does use the phrase PVC love dolls, which I thought was funny. Love dolls.
All right. Well, yeah, hopefully we'll get much more advanced sex robots out of all this.
Yeah.
Jamie, go ahead.
We're seeing a lot of AI pets come into the market.
Yes, that's right.
And that's one thing that makes me a little bit optimistic about AI. I'm kind of neutral about it, but I do look forward to seeing the ways in which it can fill, ways to provide pets to kids who are allergic, or non-sexual human companions to, like, say, the elderly, or kids who have a little bit trouble relating to others, and so they need an AI companion to kind of help them get those social skills that
the elderly deserve AI sexual companionship as well, Jamie.
Well, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have it, but I'm just there are reasons why people might need companionship other than sex.
Definitely.
I actually do know that there's been some applications of that, like AI just, again, found when I was looking at Reddit today on the Church of Satan subreddit. That's one thing that they talked about was AI companionship for dementia patients. That does very well for them.
I'm older. I always remember the Jetsons. I relate everything to the Jetsons and Rosie the robot. They had a great robot that it was like basically their housekeeper was a robot, and it would do everything. It would help George get dressed and make him dinner and just, do everything. But if there were some level of just something that could be a real assistance to an elderly person, a disabled person, anyone that for some reason needed the assistance, that would be pretty great.
There's an example in the show Humans where an elderly guy has a AI companion who he kind of looks upon as his own son, who helps him keep track of his medications, gives him like great enlightening conversations, like really fills in a role of a son to him.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys would remember. I saw it. I don't remember it so clearly, but some years ago there was a movie with Joaquin Phoenix. I think it's called Her. Yes. And he sort of develops a romantic relationship with his operating system that runs his home. You know, it's a slightly future set film where we've got this system that runs our whole smart home, basically. And it's got a personality and it interacts with you. It's not a physical body, but it's this personality that exists in your home with you. And he sort of developed a whole romantic type of relationship with his. It's a wild world we're getting into. And with that, we will conclude this roundtable discussion. I'd like to thank all of our members who joined in to listen in real time, and of course, those who chose to contribute to the discussion. Like I said earlier, if you ever want to participate in conversations like these, they are open to all members of Satanic Delco. Now, if you have a moment out there, please visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. I'd like you to stay safe out there, and hail Satan.
Men skydden efter. Det borde vi se oss med.